Hello, everyone. It is November 16th, 2022, and welcome to my show. And Adam, are you there? We have Adam with us today. He's going to read my book again.
We're going to read the book again because what do we have happen in the last week?
Before you do, Adam, there's a gentleman in here, and I'll put up the comment for you so you can read it.
Hi, Red. I'm here in Pensacola by my mother's house. I turned her on to yours and Adam's podcast, and I created a monster. She loves your show. I bought her the book. I bought the book for her from you. She was so excited. That's great, John Noth.
Yes, and John, happy 75th to her. God bless her. She made it 75 years.
Gina Noth, happy birthday. Oh, well, that's nice. That's awesome. Glad to hear that you enjoy listening to Red. At least somebody does. Oh, boy. Nobody cares in what I did about it. It's a book that Red wrote. How long ago did you write this, Red?
Actually, I wrote it in 2014. I didn't really release it until 2016.
Okay, so this is 8 years.
Yeah, it's been, 5 years ago it was released.
Released, yeah. Oh, 5. Try 7.
7.
These last 2 years went by quickly, didn't they?
They sure did.
Sure did.
I couldn't believe our show with you. I couldn't believe it's over 2 years.
No, when I sat and we've sat there just on Mob Vlog. We have sat there for over 100 hours now in this last however long you've been coming on the show, almost 2 years. February would be 2 years. It's crazy. It's just crazy. So let's see. In the last part of the book, you went to Vegas and you won some money and you picked up some shoes. You picked up a bag and put it in the trunk of a car and you drove home. And last I remember, you got home safely, right?
And I crashed.
And you crashed. All right. The drop off. You ready to get into this?
I'm ready as you are.
Okay. And is everybody out here ready? Everybody's ready. Okay. Palmdale, California, Trace. Hey, everybody. I see everybody's on here, and it's good to see you. Sonny Zarro, I got to get down to the freaking warehouse and pick up your package. My God, I'm going out tonight. I'm gonna stop down there. I have to remember to. Anyway, I've just been busy. If you knew the amount of crap that I've been doing, you'd have no idea. All right, the drop off and fall out. When I woke up, I had breakfast and called Kurt Hansen. He told me to pick him up about 4 doors down from Marion's place at Claremont and Foster, right by the firehouse. I went and picked him up. We drove to Jimmy's place in Oak Lawn, stopping for a cheeseburger. When we got to Jimmy's, Kurt asked me to give him that bag I brought with me. I opened the trunk and gave him the bag, and we went and rang the doorbell. Jimmy personally answered the door with a smile on his face as Kurt handed him the bag. I said, "Wait a minute." So I went back to the car and returned with a shoebox, which I then handed to Jimmy. His face lit up with an even bigger smile, and he said in his thick Italian accent, "Oh, you will remember me." We all went into the house to a covered screen porch at the back, and we sat down. He opened the shoebox, and with a joyful voice, "What a fine pair of shoes! I done got a pair of shoes this nice. Thank you." And I smiled at him, and he smiled at me. The two of them talked, then we left. Jimmy said goodbye to both of us, and we drove straight to American Bonding. I drove into the car into the parking lot, and we went in together. Joey wasn't there, but Irv Weiner was, along with several other people. Irv began to speak to me about my former employers. He asked me how long they had owed me money, and I said several months now. "Come on, where's your car?" He and I climbed into my car, leaving Kurt behind at American Bonding. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I was sure things were going to get interesting for my former bosses. Irv and I drove to the Inferno first. We walked in and Irv looked at Nicky Stevens and said, "When are you going to pay this kid what you owe him?" Nick walked with Irv into the back office. When they came out, Nick handed me a check. I said, "Nick, you never paid me with a check before, and I want cash now." Nick said something. Nick started to say something, and Irv cut him off, saying, "I told you to make the kid happy. Now, make him happy. Give him his cash." Nick reached under the bar and gave me the money that he owed me. Irv said, "Give us a drink." Nick, in a humble voice, said, "What are you guys having?" Irv ordered a 7-7, and I had a club soda. Irv never paid for the drinks. We got up and left. As I got to my car to leave, as we got to my car to leave, I asked Irv what he told Nick. And he said I didn't need to know. He then told me, "Let's get to the other place down the street." I cautioned Irv, warning him that the guy at the over 21 kept a 45 underneath the counter. Irv told me they said they didn't stop making guns when he bought his, and he showed me the small 38 snub nose in his left suit jacket pocket. We went over to the over 21 bookstore, and Dan Johavic, is that right? Jivanovic?
Jovanovic. His name was Jovanovic.
Okay. The manager was there. Irv told him, "Give the kid his money." We stood there waiting for his reaction. Dan looked over and then said, "I'm not giving him a damn thing," as he reached for his pistol. Irv reached over in his pocket and gripped the 38 at his side and slapped Dan with his right hand. He ordered Dan to get down from the raised counter and to go to the office. Dan tried to lock the door once he was inside, and Irv pushed the door in with his shoulder, pointing his pistol at Dan's face. Irv told him in a raging voice, "When are you guys going to learn? Give the kid his money." A flustered, red-faced Dan held out a handful of cash and said, "Take it." Irv looked over to me and said, "Go ahead, take it all." It was much more than he owed me, but I did what I was told. As we walked out of the place, Irv looked up and down the street as he put his finger in my chest and said, "Find some kind of store, as close to this one as you can get, and rent it." We climbed in the back and we drove back to American Bonding, and I counted the money. It was more than $1,000. I told Irv, "This is more than what they owe me." He replied, "That's okay, kid. You're going to put them out of business." He smiled while he looked ahead. I now noticed that his monogrammed custom glasses had his initials etched in the top corner of his lens. I'd never seen anything quite so flashy before in my life. Really?
No, it was like right up here in the corner.
Yeah.
He had his initials etched into the glass.
Yeah, like Ray-Bans. They say Ray-Ban up there.
He had his had Irv Weiner up there.
Dude, I want to get that done, man. I want to get that done.
I never saw anything like that at all.
I drove back to American Bonding, and Kurt had already left, so I went back to my apartment, musing about the events of the day. The outfit had a very different approach to handling business than anything I had ever experienced. My first real estate and another venture. Let me take a sip here.
I'm going to do the same.
The apartment building I called home was located on Carmen Street, about 8 buildings west of Broadway. It was a 6-flat, constructed of brick with a new boiler that heated each of the units. The apartment had mahogany crown moldings and the baseboards with a wall safe in the walk-in closet, which really made them stand out as nice places to live. Each apartment was identical, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathroom units with washing facilities for each tenant, with storage, a boiler room, and a workshop. The whole building and grounds were in very good shape and had been well maintained for a number of years. The building was for sale, so I knocked on the landlord's door and told him I wanted to buy it. After we negotiated a price, he agreed to owner finance it. Several weeks later, I had full ownership of it and raised all of my tenants' rent and moved into the former landlord's apartment, keeping one of the 4 available garages for myself. This upset several of the 4 remaining tenants. Some of them moved out, but I quickly found replacements for them. In under a month, I had the place filled again just by putting a sign up in the window. I felt very self-satisfied on the purchase and looked forward to other profitable ventures to come my way. Around this time, I began open communications with federal authorities to help clean things up in my area. I made an effort to contact the FBI. After Special Agent John Osborne's fruitless efforts to get any bartenders to talk to him, I had picked up a business card with his name on it that I'd retrieved from the trash can and stored in my wallet a few months earlier. He stood out to me because I recognized him from several visits to various locations, and I almost felt sorry for him. I called the FBI from the number on the card and asked to speak to Special Agent John Osborne. I identified myself at his request and explained to him that people were laughing at him. He was never going to get an employee to give him information and thus put himself out of work. I told him I would give him all the information he needed, but that it had to be on my terms. He agreed and wanted to meet with me. I laid things out and said I would meet with him at the Lion House in the Lincoln Park Zoo at about 1:30 p.m. the following day. He asked me how he would recognize me. I explained, "You won't need to recognize me. I'll recognize you." At that point, the conversation ended and I hung up the phone. Wow, the Lion House.
I always picked 1:30. I don't know why. I always picked 1:30 on almost everything.
All right, the FBI and I meet. In August of 1971, I met with Special Agent John Osborne at about 1 o'clock at Lincoln Park Zoo inside the Lion House. As we had agreed, I was walking around in a work shirt and blue jeans with cowboy boots, surveying the area to see how many agents would show up. I saw a man looking at one of the big cats eating popcorn, wearing a suit, white socks, wingtip shoes, and that made him stand out like a sore thumb. I casually walked up to him, also looking at the big cat, and said, "You must be John." He immediately led me to the back door where another agent was waiting. They drove me to Evanston, Illinois, a north suburb of Chicago that had no mob influence, where it would be safe to talk. They led me into a restaurant for lunch where we discussed what I knew about the outfit. John explained to me that providing them with information would never get me rich. But they would pay for my expenses. I was determined to set my own rules about giving them information on organized crime activities, and that they would have to decide whether or not to accept what I offered. I shared the information with him regarding specific police officers on the take and the money they received. I could tell from the first meeting with John that he would be easy for me to work with and that he would keep things confidential. He proposed calling all information into him and him alone, using the name of my former Marine Corps company commander as a code name to confirm it was me, on his own private line, so that I wouldn't have to go through the FBI switchboard. John was curious why I contacted him, and he had been trying to talk to other bartenders that worked in outfit joints and was never able to get anyone to share information with him. I told him that they had bullied and hurt people who were afraid of them, including me. The people he tried to interview simply wouldn't help, and he had a hard time coming to terms with it and couldn't see why they weren't stepping up to do the right thing. What he just couldn't understand was this simple economic fact. Why would somebody help him and risk getting murdered, or at the very least, being out of a good-paying job, if their boss was indicted in the business, was closed as a result of their testimony to the feds? Yeah, of course. I have my own reason for coming forward. I wanted to try and stop some of the police who took payoffs, along with people who paid them to look the other way while they lavished in crime. I really wanted to end the vicious murder cycle where thugs and hitmen got away with anything they wanted to, because people refused to take a stand against them. These outfit hitmen were literally getting away with murder, and I wanted to stop it. I returned home and made plans on how I was going to proceed with my business and personal dealings. The stage was now set for some intensely informative maneuvering. Growing a business. All right. I went back to Old
Jacqueline
Town.
has a question. Jacqueline, you're going to have to listen. If you answer that question, you're going to have to listen till later in the book.
I have a question. I don't know if you answer it. What was your code name? What was your commanding officer's name?
Art Zierzo. Arthur Zierzo. Zerzow.
Zierzo. So what was your code name? Zierzo.
Art. I used to say, "Hey, this is Art." They'd say, "Yeah." Nobody ever knew Red. They didn't know,
Yeah.
they didn't know my name. Even the gals in the office say, "Oh, hi, Art. How you doing?" "Yeah, I'll see if he's in."
Gotcha. Growing a business. I went back to Old Town looking for a storefront to rent for the old bookstore. I couldn't find anything in the area except for the old building that was set back off the street and was pretty run down. There was a hot dog stand that was owned by a Korean family that took up the half of the lot, leaving a long paved driveway that led back to the building of interest. The building itself was built in 1897, and at the time of construction, it served as a blacksmith shop with a carriage house that was made to accommodate both carriages and horses. It had barn doors that swung out when opened. As I first looked at it, I could see piles of debris and junk from floor to top of the 14-foot high ceiling, not to mention all the garbage housed upstairs on the second floor. It had taken a long time to acquire all that stuff, and it would take a lot of effort just to clear it out. I can't say that I thought it all made me happy, but it was clearly the best option I had, so I decided to go for it. Sam Napaderno, an aged gentleman in his
Sam Napaderno. Nice
Napaderno,
old man.
Sam Napaderno, an aged gentleman in his late 70s, owned the place and agreed on a 5-year lease with a 5-year option after I haggled with him about the price. Rent was to be $25 a month for the first year. And each following year, an additional $25 a month would be tacked on as a monthly payment. He allowed me 6 months rent-free to clean it up before making my first payment to him. It was the building lease, meaning I was responsible for the entire building, which included the hot dog stand in the front, although they still paid Sam separate monthly rent. I drove back to American Bonding looking for Kurt. I found him there playing cards with one of the other bondsmen. I told him that I had a place and he had rented it. When I showed him the lease, he said, "Wow, what a deal. Let's go look at the place." I drove him there and pulled into the driveway, and we got out. While I opened the barn doors. "Well, that explains $25 a month rent with 6 months rent free," he chuckled. "This place is really going to take a whole lot of cleaning up. Kenny and you are going to have to have your work cut out for you. I'll get the money to build it." I asked him where he was going to get the money, and he told me, "I'm just going to borrow it from Francis Carnicle." What?
Yes.
Francis Carnicle, is that right?
He was from Whippany, New Jersey.
Whippany, New Jersey, whom Kurt has known since his days in the Marine Corps. I drove Kurt back and bid him goodbye as I headed home, stopping for a steak dinner along the way. I didn't hear from Kurt or Kenny for a few days, at which time Kurt asked me to meet him at the Country Corner Kitchen, the Country Corner Kitchen, a restaurant in Tinley Park. We sat down and ordered breakfast. While we were waiting for our food, Kurt pulled out a pen and began to write on a napkin. As he wrote on a napkin, he told me, "I'm putting up the money. My sister, Kenny, who's allergic to manual labor, isn't doing anything, and you're going to have to do all the work. I'll help you as much as possible." He showed me a napkin where he'd written all 3 of our names, Kenny, Kurt, and Billy, saying, "What do we need Kenny for? You think he's going to go down there and work? We'll see. We'll see the next coming first." Oh, geez.
Kurt had a jovial way of saying things. "We'll see the next coming first." He's not going to work.
I watched him draw a line through Kenny's name, and then he said, "We are 50% partners now instead of thirds." I was quick to tell him, We're all partners to start. We were all partners to start with. Why do you want to cut him out? That remark, he told me, if you want to give him half of your half for doing nothing, go right ahead. On another separate napkin, he drew up a written agreement for a partnership between him and me. He explained this is not a legal contract, it's just so that you and I won't have any problems with our responsibilities in the future. We both initialed the napkin and he put it in his pocket. With our new partnership now formally confirmed, we finished eating and we left the restaurant. Kurt went on his way, giving me some cash to use to begin fixing up the place. I called the waste removal company and gave them the address of the building that I had just rented and requested some construction dumpsters to be dropped off there ASAP. I then looked around for some help with the clearing out process. This was not a one-man job, and the removal of the junk from the scrap heap was going to take some extra hands and backs, or there'd be no way to make the current dumping grounds into usable space for a store. I hired 2 bust-out kids to help me with the dirty work. What's a bust-out kid?
Just kids walking along the street. I said, hey, you want a job? They're bust outs, hillbilly kids from uptown.
Okay. Never heard that term. I don't know how many 30-yard dumpsters we filled that day, but as it began to get dark, we had 3/4 of the first floor cleared and empty. That's when I noticed with great disappointment that there was a dirt floor beneath all the debris. Oh my gosh, a dirt floor.
Yep.
Next day, the waste removal company hauled away the last dumpster load of junk, and I paid the guys for their help and bought them both a hot dog from the hot dog stand out front. It was fitting because all of us had worked until we were dog tired. Is that a pun? Is that a pun? It was fitting because you guys were dog tired. It was fitting your dogs. It's a pun.
Okay.
I went home and showered, changed clothes, and then went out to have a good meal. I called Kurt and said, Kurt, you're not going to believe this, but the joint has a dirt floor. Kurt just laughed and said, at this point, I'd believe anything. It figures you picked it out. You sure got that place cleaned out quick. I'll meet you there tomorrow. The following day, I met Kurt in our potential business establishment. He surveyed the scene, looking at the floor, and said, we have a real problem here. Do you know that the concrete workers union are all on strike? I guess we'll just have to pour the concrete floor ourselves. This place was turning into a lot of work, but I was up for it. I knew that this was the best option we had, even if it wasn't quite ideal. It seems to be true that you just have to take what you are dealt and make it into what you want. There are a lot of people who never accomplish anything just because they expect everything to be perfect before they get to work. I have found that you have to make your own opportunities for success, and then it can happen, not the reverse. Yes, luck is success and preparedness meeting opportunity.
I was an opportunist.
Yeah. The price of a concrete floor. After searching for a month, Kurt finally found a place that would rent me a dump truck. He gave me directions to the gravel pits where they filled sand, gravel, and Portland. I rented the truck and picked it up and went to the store to meet up with Kurt. Kurt was in the passenger seat giving me directions. We left the service road from Eden's Expressway after we passed the concrete pit. We had to take a service road back to the pits. We drove out there and then saw a picket line blocking the entrance. This was all part of the concrete worker union strike and their efforts to halt all construction that used concrete. Timing, it's everything, right, Red?
Oh, yeah.
Kurt gave me some instructions and told me, put the pedal to the metal and run those sons of bitches over if they don't get out of the way. I downshifted and floored it as I honked the air horn as a warning. While climbing a steep grade into the gravel pit, the picket line parted, just like the Red Sea. We made quick time in the pit as we overhauled the truck with gravel, sand, and 5,100-pound bags of Portland. I remember Kurt telling me, now all we have to do is get out of here. He climbed back into the truck after paying the man. I knew it was easier said than done because the union workers had seen us come in and knew we had to come out. We had been in the pits for a couple of hours. We were sure the union workers had called for reinforcements. Kurt shared some sage advice with me. Billy, get it going as fast as you can. We're going to bust that picket line. I began driving the rig much faster than I wanted to, with Kurt urging me on to get the truck going even faster. We were accelerating downhill now with thousands and thousands of pounds,
We were
tons of
overloaded. We were overloaded.
right. I saw off in the distance the 12-foot high chain link fence gates with the Union picket line across it. I looked down at the speedometer and I was doing 50 miles an hour with a dangerously heavy load in the back of the bed of the dump truck. I couldn't have stopped it if I wanted to. Several men on the picket line fired gunshots at the rented truck, hitting the windshield, but missed the targeted radiator. Kurt stuck his hand out the window with his own pistol, returning fire as we broke through the gates, leaving the pits behind us. Jesus, man. Come on, really?
It was crazy. It was crazy, man.
It sounds nuts, man. Yeah,
I looked at Kurt and said, "Are you kidding?" And he said, "Do it."
I don't know if I'd want to continue working for this guy or with this guy. I had to slow down substantially as I exited the gravel pit. We went through a grassy knoll and down over a curb before we ended up on the moderately busy Edens Expressway. Once we got on the main road, we headed to the store. At this point, I started to feel more comfortable with the whole idea Kurt had for us. When we got back to our place, I began backing the truck down the long 75-foot driveway. There were mere inches of clearance on each side between the two buildings. As I drove it in reverse, I was relieved when the rig was finally in position to unload. I saw an electric cement mixer in the front of the store as I came to a stop. Kurt commented, "Well, at least he came through with the cement mixer." I dumped the load and returned the truck to the rental place, Pearson's U-Haul, and I parked it in the back so that it would be harder to notice the broken windshield. I was lucky that they didn't inspect it when I was there. I hurriedly left the lot and drove back to the store. When I got there, Kurt had plugged the power into the cement mixer and it was ready to use and rolling. He handed me a garden hose to use to put water in it. That's when he explained to me, all you have to remember is 3 to 1, 3 shovelfuls of sand, 2 shovelfuls of gravel, and 1 shovelful of Portland. He showed me how to mix it with a total of 6 shovels of material that he added to the mixture. With the simple instruction, he made a quick departure. As he made a sarcastic remark saying, "Have fun," with a smile on his face, he left me to go to work. I filled the mixer with a single load and emptied it into a wheelbarrow and dumped it inside the store on the floor. I spread it out as far as I could and noticed that I put a bit too much water in it, but I figured I had started a good foundation and had done enough for that strenuous, nerve-wracking day. One of the bust-out labor guys that helped me clear out the place saw me and asked me if I needed help with the cement. I told him to meet me there early the next day.
That was Clayton.
Morning, true to his word, Clayton was there for me. He was a hillbilly kid from uptown that worked really hard, and I was relieved that he was available to help. As I mixed the cement, he rolled it in the wheelbarrow, which was loaded to the brim with cement. He dumped it out in evenly spaced drop-off points, covering the building's dirt floor with a rough layer of cement. Every so often, I would stop mixing to smooth out the surface until it had a decent finish. How many wheelbarrows of cement did you guys have to take into this place, Red?
About 600.
About 100? Wow.
About 600.
Of 600? Damn, man. How
About.
many days has it had to taken you? A week at least.
No, read.
It took a lot of,
It damn near killed me.
It took a lot of sweat and effort. I felt like I had a broken back, but we finally finished the job. Every bone in my body ached. We had begun at 6 a.m. and didn't get done until the summer sun had set. We parted ways as I gave Clayton $50 cash for his time and help. I crawled into my car, drove home, took a long hot shower, and stayed in bed for 3 days straight, only getting up to eat and use the bathroom. I was in some rather severe pain and had worked so hard, damn near killed me. No thanks to my business partner. Yeah, yeah.
I was
Okay, this
thinking about
story.
Kurt the whole time, saying, "Yeah, he wouldn't get his hands dirty."
Kurt kept calling me, but I wasn't answering the phone while I was recovering. On the fourth day, I finally called him at American Bonding and said, I drove by the store and all of the sand, gravel, and Portland was gone. Do we need to get more? I busted out laughing, saying, no, the last load I made was a little short, but I put 2 shovelfuls of dirt in to finish it off. He asked me to meet him there, so I did. As I opened the barn doors, he said, you know, you did a nice job here, as he looked at the floor. I need a key so I can get in while you're not around. We walked around on the curing cement floor, describing to each other where to build various items we would need for the store. He was also reminding me of an obvious fact. Red, we still need heat and air conditioning. By now, I knew that Kurt's vision of the word we meant that I would be doing all the work again, but he would be there to provide us with any of the supplies I'd need to finish the job. At least the guy was consistent. The next week, I went to Montgomery Ward's damaged goods store and bought a 5-ton air conditioner that had sealed copper tubing with Freon in it. Of course, I installed it all by myself, including the forced air duct work. Kurt came by to take a look at it, bringing me a 200 amp Zinsco panel box. Zinsco?
Electric, Zinsko.
With some electrical wire that he procured from Weenie World. Later on that same week, he bought me some unassembled drop ceiling parts and some stolen light fixtures, which he said fell off a truck. I again enlisted the services of Clayton, the hillbilly kid, to help me wire the lights and the various duplex outlets that we needed. A few days later, I opened the doors to the store and saw a pile of 2x4s, plywood, and enough plexiglass to finish the construction of the place. We had mapped out the office, a 24-inch raised platform counter, a dividing wall that would separate the sales of adults magazines, or Chicago Tribune writer John Cass later put it, smut, and a showcase for the 8mm films that would purchase once things were ready. Excuse me. I replaced the swing barn doors with a nice aluminum glass storefront, all with the help of Clayton. It was really coming together, and all the hard work really started to show. Over the next just several weeks of construction, a short, thin man in his 60s came by and paid us a visit. He was wearing a clean gray construction worker pants, a short sleeve shirt. He looked around as he surveyed the place, my work, saying, nice. A while later, Kurt came in to talk to him. The man said that his name was Marsh, and he would be building the peep shows in the back of the store. The older man brought in a balding 48-year-old Alva Johnson Rogers, Johnny Rogers, as he called himself.
Elva.
Rogers was a real gentleman when it came to construction, but bragged that he could do anything after serving time in the Atlanta Federal Prison with Marsh. It was clear to me that he knew nothing about what he was doing. Marsh didn't stick around to see Johnny make a fool out of himself. Despite Johnny's ignorance and obvious deficiencies, he kept insisting that he knew how to hook up the electricity. Several times throughout our work on the site, I saw him foolishly shock himself, most notably during the assembly of the peep show booths. In the process of working on the frames for the peep shows, Johnny somehow had managed to get himself caught between 2 electrical fields. He was receiving 220 volts of current surging through his entire body as he bounced up and down, cracking his chin and then top of his head on an open hole where the screen for the peep show booth would eventually mount. I saw this happening and came to his aid by giving him a solid punch to the head while he was between,
which he thanked me for. He thanked me
in
for
order
it.
to set him free. for for which he genuinely thanked me as proved by the broad smile on his face. Thank God Marsh wasn't here to see the entertainment, I told him, and he readily agreed with me. Johnny Rogers explained that he shared his cell in prison with Marsh, aka Marshall Caifano, the old man that I had seen in the construction outfit a bit earlier. That's my guy. I got his time cut short from prison, and after he got out, he brought me here to Chicago. That's what he said. Johnny Rogers grew up in rural Polk County, Florida, real hillbilly prison, several times for bank robbery and other crimes. He also explained that his guy would be splitting the proceeds, menza, the outfit term for 50-50, from the peep shows with himself. From the peep shows with himself, this guy, Kurt, and I. We suddenly had partners again. It was explained to me. When I talked to Kurt about it, he told me not to worry because we had the keys to the coin boxes. And, quote, we're going to get our share out of the boxes before he gets to it. And, quote, Kurt assured me.
We're not even open. He's already thinking about how to steal.
It's crazy. That's crazy. This wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear, but I wasn't surprised to hear it either. This was Kurt's modus operandi. After all, but I wasn't sure it was a good idea to take that kind of attitude with these new partners of ours, particularly with this guy Fano. All this time, I made regular reports to John Osborne, my FBI handler, by phone, using the code name of my last company commander, Zerzo. We finally open, and Kurt makes a move on me. Okay, wonder what this means. We opened the store on Labor Day weekend, and we made a total of $13. All this despite the fact that
24/7, 4 days.
we planning on remaining open 24/7, 7 days a week, and had no other employees. It was obvious to me that if we really wanted to make some money, then we were catering to the wrong type of clientele, the heterosexual community. Our store was located between the Bayou Theater, a gay bar, the Glory Hole Tavern, and the Over 21, all of which were gay themed. It was very clear to me that we would make a lot more money if we changed things up to cater to the homosexual crowds that are always frequenting the area. I made some immediate changes in our featured material. After the change-up refocused, I quickly learned that I had the right business model. Customers and their money immediately poured in, and I salvaged the opening week's bottom line. Kurt told me, some of my brother must have rubbed off on you. I'm not going to run that kind of place. We had real difference of opinions on how the ways things should be run, but I was convinced that we would never turn a profit if we didn't keep with the dramatic changes I was making. As I explained earlier, Kurt had taken out a loan for the materials from his buddy, Francis Carnicle. Unbeknownst to me, Kurt had stashed some of the money from the loan away for himself, giving me materials that he procured from Weenie World instead of paying for them. I wondered what he did with the money and learned later that he had actually had a noble purpose for the funds. He was desperately trying to cure his ailing sister, Marion. Kurt used the bulk of the money that was supposed to go to the business startups to pay for fruitless trips to the Philippines to procure some voodoo cancer treatments for Marion. Soon after their return to the States, she passed away. Despite his best efforts, Kurt was powerless to do anything to save his sister. A few days after the fallout in business philosophies, Kurt told me that I was out of the business and to stay away from the store. I had the only combination to the safe and all of the keys to the coin boxes. When I left, he had no way of taking the money from the store. And when he realized the fact, he didn't realize that until it was too late. Over the course of the following weeks, Kurt threatened to kill me several times. We had constant arguments as to how to manage and run the store. He even fired several shots at me under the L tracks right next to the police headquarters. None of the police paid any attention. And given our ties to organized crime, I knew I was on my own to deal with the situation. Kurt wanted those keys in combination to the safe, and he was very willing to kill me to get them. Another associate of mine named Lenny was behind the counter when Kurt came in with Big Bob Davis, a mountain of a man that stood 6'8" and weighed well over 300 pounds. He picked up Lenny by his throat, lifting him over the counter, and said, "This ain't no leg breaking situation. I just want to get a hold of Red." Kurt approvingly watched the exchange from a couple of feet away. Lenny called me on the phone telling me that they were holding a gun to his head and that if I didn't come down right there, they were going to kill him. I told him, "Don't worry, Lenny, they aren't going to kill you. You're the only one that knows how to reach me." Lenny was scared, so he said to him, "Look, I just work here. Can you pay me? Can you pay me and I will leave?" I knew better than to give in, and Kurt finally left the store disappointed. Lenny was more than a bit shaken, but it was obvious no worse for wear. It was obvious no worse for wear.
He was no worse for wear.
Okay. I moved from motel to motel for a time, checking in with Lenny through my pager as I stayed on the move in order to keep everyone safe. Sometime later, I called Lenny from Marina City from a restaurant payphone. He told me Kurt just wanted to talk to me, and he was at American Bonding, and I should call him there. The drive. I called American Bonding to talk to Kurt. He told me that he didn't want any more trouble and we could straighten everything out. I told him, "No way. I'm tired of you shooting at me." He chuckled and said, "That's over. We have to put the business back together. Business first." I didn't trust a word he said. He told me, "Look, meet me across the street from American Bonding. I'll be alone. We can go for a drive in your car and talk it out." I told him I'd be there in a half an hour. When I showed up to pick up Kurt for our ride negotiations, there were hundreds of people around us, and I asked him to get in the car. Kurt got in and should have known he was in for when he saw that I had on a motorcycle helmet and driving gloves. Squealing my tires in my 73 Oldsmobile, we were driving sideways as I made a left-handed turn onto Balboa Drive. Kurt kept telling me to slow down. I headed for Lakeshore Drive at about 60 miles an hour. We were running through red lights, turning on S-curves, where the speed limit was 20 miles an hour. Kurt was doing all he could to hold on to the car for dear life. I turned off an exit on Addison Avenue, pulled into a parking lot, slammed on the brakes, and turning the car sideways as we skidded to a halt. "All those times you threatened to kill me, I'm only going to tell you one time. Keep it up. And I'm the only one that's going to kill you. And I'm the only one that's going to kill you," I told Kurt. He was breathing heavily and got out of the car. I left him there in the parking lot and drove off with the keys and combinations still in my possession and in my mind. Partner swap. All right. After dropping off Kurt, I went straight to the Red Fox Inn, where Marshall Caifano frequented. I parked in the lot and went in to see him. He was sitting at the bar, and I approached him as I approached him in genuine anger. I walked up to him and threw all sets of the store keys onto the bar, saying, you call yourself a man of honor? I'm through with you people." Marshall didn't react to my accusation at all. He tried to calm me down and asked me to have a seat and have a drink with him. He obviously knew nothing about the way Kurt had been trying to kill me and take over the store. "No thanks," and I headed toward the door. On my way to the exit, two large men picked me off of my feet and carried me back to a smiling Johnny Marshall, a.k.a. Marshall Caifano. They let go of me, and he said with a grin, "Come sit down and have a drink with me. Calm down." I again headed to the exit, and the same two guys brought me back off my feet in the ground. He said a bit exasperated, "Are you going to sit down or not?" So I sat down on the bar stool next to him. The bartender came over and said, "What are you drinking?" I said, "Give me a shot of scotch with a watered back." The bartender poured it for me, and I quickly drank the shot and got up to leave. The same two bruisers brought me back at the bar stool, where I saw Marshall with an even bigger smile laughing, and he said, "Do you want another drink?" "Yeah." The bartender poured me another. I was now crystal clear that Marsh wasn't going to let me leave without his permission. I sat down next to him and I asked him why. He asked me why I was so upset. I told him Kurt had taken over the store and was trying to kill me. The grin left his face and I swallowed my scotch, followed by the water back. He then asked me what had happened. I told him that Kurt had taken over the store and told me to stay out of it. I also told him that Kurt intended to steal a little money off the top of the coin boxes, but he couldn't do that now because I had just given him the ring of keys. Marshall and I sat and talked for a few hours. He called me down as he bought me several drinks. He stood up and said, "Follow me." We made our way to a payphone in the lounge's foyer. When we got to the phone, he put a dime on the dime and told me to dial Kurt's number for him. I told him that Kurt went to sleep early, and if I woke him, he'd be very angry. "Just do as you're told," he said. I dialed Kurt's phone number at home, and Marshall snatched the phone receiver out of my hand before I finished dialing. I heard Marshall say, "Yeah, it's me. Meet me on the corner of," and he put his hand over the receiver. He asked me where the nearest restaurant to the store was. Where the nearest restaurant to the store was, I said it was the Stagecoach. Marshall continued his talk with Kurt at the corners. "The Stagecoach, you know the place?" He then hung up the phone without waiting for Kurt's response. He told me, "Well, go in your car. Come on." We left to see how things were going at the store. We were followed by the two large men in another car. When we got to the store with snowflakes falling, we all got out and Marshall started for the corner of the Stagecoach restaurant down the street. I remember looking at the short, thin old man walking alone down the street. He was certainly not what he appeared. The other two men told me, "Come on, Red, we're going in there," gesturing at my business. I said, "No way. He's got a double-barreled sawed-off shotgun." One of the bruisers chuckled at me and said, "You've got nothing to be afraid of. You're with us." I told them I don't want to go in anyway. So they went into the store without me. A few minutes later, a pickup truck came out of the driveway with a man and a girl in it, leaving in a fury. After the exit, one of Marshall's big guys named Dick told me to come on in. It appeared they had successfully cleared the place and that there was no one else in the store. I cautiously entered and we went into the office. I opened up the safe and all the money was there, just like I had left it. We started to empty the coin boxes and count the money on the plush carpet of the office, placing the quarters into $10 stacks. There was a knock on the door and Dick went to answer it. He came back with Marshall. Sorry. Okay, Dick. This is one of the big guys. Okay.
Quite.
Yeah. He came back with Marshall, and they both came into the office. Marshall saw us counting the coins, and I asked what happened with Kurt. He told me never to ask him again. As the night went on, we had around $1,000 in quarters. Marshall told me, "500 for you, 500 for me." Now, that's the way that it'll be. I don't care how much money you take in, you owe me $500 a week, whether you make $100 a week or $10,000. He then took me aside and said, "But you have to promise me something. If that guy calls you or bothers you, you have to get a hold of me right away." Just as he was talking to me, the phone rang. It was Kurt. He was breathing heavily, saying, "Billy, what are you doing? You almost got me killed right here in the restaurant." As he finished his sentence, I told him, "Kurt, someone is here with me, and I promised that if you ever called or contacted me, I would tell him." I heard the click of the receiver as Kurt hurriedly hung up. Marshall told me, "Remember that promise. It was him, wasn't it?" I told him it was, but when he heard what I was saying, he'd hung up as quickly as he could. Marshall told me it was my store now, mine and mine alone. I cashed in his quarters for $20 bills and gave them to him. He then told me that Rogers would be handling the money pickups for us and that he trusted Rogers. Who's Rogers? Dick Rogers?
Johnny Rogers, Alva Johnson Rogers.
I got it. Okay, Rogers. Okay. And he trusted to get his share right each time, so Rogers wouldn't be coming in to count it. Just make sure you have an envelope of $500 for him each week. I told him I understood. Marsh and his bodyguards got in their car and drove off while I finished things at the store before going home for the night. The next day, I called and briefed my FBI handler, John Osborne, on the events that had taken place. He was impressed and encouraged me to keep up the great work. He also said that he was going to be transferring to Philadelphia. He said that someone he trusted from his unit, the mob squad, would handle me from now on. I met with the both of them, and my new handler was Special Agent Hank Schmidt. Hank was a transplant from Oklahoma and was much younger than John. And with that, my voice is done. You can tell.
You did well, Adam.
Is everybody enjoying this? Because everybody's enjoying this, because I'm not reading the comments. I'm just reading the book. So.
I've been putting a few up. You know, some people remember, like Michael Graham remembers where the Stagecoach Inn was on North Avenue in Wells. Some people are John Olivetti, Dick Hoyt. Is that a joke? No, his name was Dick Hoyt. His name was Dick Hoyt.
Wow. Did you have to pay big licenses for those peep shows?
Pardon me?
Did you have to pay big licenses? Big bucks for the license for
that
the peep
didn't
show?
come till later, and I really got in on the ground floor. I really did. Very cheap. And I was smart enough to get a PPA, public place of amusement license. But that's much, much later.
Yeah. Wow. Well, interesting. The book is interesting, and for those if you're interested, we've made it to page 70 out of 227. So we're making our way through this thing slowly but surely.
Jacqueline says, "In the book, you're doing good." John McShane, this is awesome. Keep it going, guys.
Yeah, glad you guys are enjoying this. Anybody reading along? Anybody have the book that's reading along when we're doing this?
I don't know how many people like it.
Adam Cuss, love it. Great, awesome. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying this. Anyone ever have breakfast or lunch at the world famous Harlow Grill on North Avenue, Melrose Park? Good chow and be fast.
Robert.
Love reading it, Red and Adam. Keep smoking, Adam. You're reading well. Keep smoking. Red's the one that's smoking.
I don't think that's what he meant.
I'm down here reading. He's up there at the, Okay. So, my voice is starting to get shot. All the tours that I did for Halloween, and then it's just a lot of talking. And I need to save it because I might be doing something important tonight. So.
Yes. Very important.
Well, with that said, what do you say, Red?
I say thank you, Adam. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to do this, and it's a lot of fun. Well, you got to try different things. The people like different things. You got to innovate and try different things. So see what flies, see what they like, see what they don't like. So, all right, Red.
Oh, nice comment, sir.
It has been fun.
Yes, and thank all you wonderful people.
Thanks for coming in.
Yes. Thank all you wonderful people for stopping by. Stopping by.
All right. With that, you have a great day, Red.
Thank you, Adam.
The combination of the videotapes and Wemette's testimony resulted in the conviction of 2 men on extortion charges. One of them was Frank Schweiz, known in syndicate circles as the German, a feared mob terrorist and a suspect in a number of gangland murders.
He was described to me by other outfit individuals as the most feared hitman. And as he said to me, my reputation precedes me, son.